you just gave quite a serious shopping list there, which most of us would like to have had and like to have owned. But we'll start with you, Colin. The question is, this is from Martin in Germany, Bonn. Is there one piece of studio gear, and it can't be yours, that stood out during your recording career? We'll brag on you.
Right, well, so because I was a bad musician and not such a good audio engineer, I've mentioned that every time.
Did you play the drums then?
No, it's keyboards, don't start. But once I was left alone, well, everyone, I don't think it was late, people were getting a late dinner or something, and I just wanted to play with a compressor. I can't tell you what compressor it was or any of that, but I couldn't believe that you could like take, I don't know, the snare drum and get all these different tones out of it if you squashed the crap out of it or played with the attack and releasing the ratio. So I just sat there and did that. And then I soloed the vocal track and started doing the same kind of stuff till by the time everyone came back, I'd screwed up everything. But I was like, this is amazing. These compressors, it changes the sound. This is so cool. And I, at that point, pushed every fader and turned every knob and the whole thing. And I was kicked out of that band pretty quick after that. But that was the most memorable experience because I was like, wow. Because at first I was like, why do we have to compress? It'll be fine. And then I realized that, oh. And then at that point, I also had a lot more respect for that guy behind the console pushing the faders. Like, oh, he's a smart guy. No wonder we sound so good after the fact, except when you put up my parts, which we seem to have muted now, but that's okay. So anyway, so it was playing with a compressor for probably a couple of hours. Like people went out and got dinner and beer, and I screwed it all up, but I had a great time and kind of lost that gig from that. But I learned that equipment is cool, and then I wanted a lot of it, and so it began.
I'm interested. Is Squash the Crap Out of It one of the presets in your plugins?
Oh, that should
be. Noted.
Let's get it in there. Colin, Squash the Crap Out of it. We need those settings that got you making. It's interesting, actually. I must say that what you're known for in my world is your compressors are some of the best out there. And actually, it's interesting that your passion was compressors first, which is kind of, it's just a happy accident?
Happy accident. I think I'm just...
You haven't intentionally done that?
Not intentionally. I just like it. I mean, I think it's interesting that, manipulating the dynamic response of a signal can really change your impression of it. That's just, and I guess best layman's terms I can tell you. I mean, it's, ratio, attack, topology, number of stages, key filter, yada, yada, yada. Who cares? It's all... when you apply it to that signal, it changes it, and it goes from like, that's a pretty good vocal, to now it's a vocal with power. And you're like, wow, okay, hey, I did that, and I'm in that preset to squash the crap out of it. I did the crap part. I'm done. Do you have any gold? Okay, sorry.
Cliff, out of that shopping list, it probably wasn't even on that shopping list you just mentioned before. Is there a piece of gear that for you had a seminal moment in your recording career?
Yes, there's one that stands out for me, and it does because for me, it is a very important part in any recording, to me anyway, is the vocal. And I had good microphones, but I remember I was working real hard to get a vocal sound that was happening back in the late 80s, in the 80s and 70s, early 80s. And I kept trying, and a friend of mine, his name is Chubba, he said, and I'd keep sending these vocals. And I had my preamp that was in my console, and I had my best mic I had, and I had my best compressor I had at the time, and I couldn't make it happen. I mean, I'd keep, okay, let me try this. And it went on, and he gave me one point of advice. He said, I want you to get these three things. The first thing on that list was an AKG C12 Stephen Paul mod with a 1.5 micron element. That's where the airband came from, and I'm telling you why it came from that. That's why it was the most important piece of equipment to me, because I understood what air was supposed to be in a vocal and what it was supposed to sound like. I knew what it was supposed to sound like now. Before, I had no idea. So when I got through and I had these three great pieces, I had a console that was lacking in preamps, lacking in Hughes, lacking in any compression that was right. And so I had to come up with something, a preamp, that would match what I was able to do with the C12. And with that, I had a whole drawer full of microphones that didn't have air. And I knew from my experience with the EQs and that we could put some air on those microphones in that preamp. And we developed our own preamps from that very thing. So the C12 is responsible, in my opinion, for where any air band preamp EQ came from. And the EQ came from, the airband EQ came from the preamp.
Can I say, we're going to do it now. This isn't an advert. We agreed on this, that I'd brag on you guys today for you, because I love all what you do, all the gear you make. This airband, we have questions into the blog. 40K at the top.
Yeah.
I've got a dog.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah?
He hates it.
He loves the airband, but a lot of people are thinking, well, it's 40K. How the heck does that work? 40K.
Okay.
You add it in, it
Yep.
shouldn't work.
Yeah, it shouldn't.
How's it working?
Well, what it does, and if you'll just imagine, at 40K, I just boosted it at 10 dB. So on the curve as it comes down from the boost, you're going to hear the tail end of whatever I decide that slope is going to be. So to be able to hear that, sometimes you'll have to take 40K and you're going to have to gain it up high enough that you can hear just that little bit of end. It'll get out of the sibilance. It may get, it may add the thing that you need on the strings rather than taking it down to 10K and boosting what goes down to 25K. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
So
that
it's
makes
where
sense.
you put that
Now
slope.
you said that, it makes sense.
And that's as far out as you could move it, where it would that we can hear it.
So basically, that tail, the further it comes down the frequency spectrum, the
Yep.
less is applied, hence the airband.
Exactly. And the trick is to be able to do that without that becoming a hiss switch
Yes.
and the hiss band.
I was going to say that, yeah. Okay. Gary, what was that bit of gear for you? Is there one bit of gear that you think, that changed it?
I really, the gear wasn't the thing for me. I've always been a musician.
Yeah.
And so people think that, because you're an engineer, you could fix things. And so I have no idea what goes on underneath the console. I don't know red from green from blue, but I know when someone's sharp or flat. And so the magic for me is always, is how I manipulate the sound musically. That being said, I think the piece of gear that's the most important for me is the console. I'm such an organization freak. I have to organize things. I have to be able to, hit one button to turn everything off instead of mousing my way to off, on. And so I organize myself. I love my VCAs. I love my consoles, and anything that can keep me in the sweet spot, which I'm going to get now, and is a lot of fun. So for me, the consoles, I can't mix with a mouse. I can adjust things, but that's my piece of gear.
I could feel Tom's spirit dropping as you said you didn't know green from red from blue, and they worked so hard to get the colours right on the
I don't
S6.
even know who he is. Oh, yeah, well. Okay.
Yeah. Tom.
I still read drums, guitar, bass, I don't have to do the color thing.
Tom, is there a bit of gear that you think, that was for me something that I just
No.
kept bringing into sessions and stuff? And
I'm going to answer it in the negative first, and then I'll
go.
give you the
That's cool.
positive.
Yeah.
So, a lot of young kids today, or certain people, tend to glorify analog recording. Now, it has some great elements to it, for sure. Now, if you didn't have Dolby A or Dolby SR in your studio like I didn't, and if you had I had a JH600 and an MCI console and somewhat noisy patch bays, and in the days of Rev 7s where they were always outputting noise, noise and print through and splicing 2-inch tape. These are challenges that I don't think the modern young guy or gal can grasp so much unless you lived it.
They look back through rose-tinted spectacles.
That's right.
Because they didn't have to deal with it.
Right. So for me, it's multi-track recording is the piece of gear. Now, that being said, 2-inch tape, 456 oxide coming off. We could just go on for days about the challenges of analog recording. And I don't care how good you were. You cut 1/2-inch masters. You're nervous. You're sitting there with the razor blade. You're like, I know this is going to work. I know it. I've done this 100 times.
I still have a cut from the from the Blues
self-harm.
Brothers Blues Brothers movie. I still have it there. It was a bad time. I made the wrong cut.
So for me, it's Pro Tools. And I know it's so obvious, but the moment I saw, I'll tell you a quick story. So I was one of the first guys to do Pro Tools on a scoring stage where you're recording the orchestra, and the composer asked me, he said, you think we're crazy? Can we actually record 48 tracks of, orchestra? And I'm like, no, I think we can do it. And he's like, but you know how expensive this is with an orchestra? I go, yeah, I think we can do it. So when I did the first edit where they played from bar 1 to 20, and then they made a mistake, and then they picked it up from bar 19 and I cut them together on the scoring stage, everybody stopped and applauded because they had never done that ever before. They had to wait until editorial, after the pieces were mixed, to string it together. And they're like, and then when they heard the first cue go into the second cue, they were like, what? So Pro Tools for me in multi-track, non-linear, non-destructive editing and crossfades was magical.
Well, you stole my thunder because I was going to do that for you.
I'm sorry.
The reason it would come as no surprise to you guys that the reason I run Pro Tools Expert is Pro Tools changed my life as a writer, as a composer, as an engineer, as a producer. And not because I can fix mistakes. That's the big mistake people make about digital recording, that you can basically composite everything back together afterwards. But because suddenly, and the other thing most people forget about Pro Tools is it works for those of us in the analog world like a mixing desk and a tape machine.
Yeah, the signal flow.
Yeah, the signal flow made sense to me straight away.
Same as me. I looked at it the first time, I go, I get this.
Yeah, I didn't need to go and figure out where folders were and stuff like that.